Hi guys, how you doing today? As I was reading through the scriptures this last week, I came across the parable about the fruitless fig tree in Luke chapter 13, verses 6 through 9. I felt the Lord leading me to preach it in my last jail service, so I did. But I also felt God leading me to give this to you guys also. So let's just go ahead and read through it. In Luke chapter 13, starting in verse 6, Jesus says, "A certain man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came and sought fruit thereon, and found none. Then said he to the dresser of the vineyard, Behold, these 3 years I come seeking fruit on this fig tree, and find none. Cut it down. Why cumbereth it to the ground? And he answering said unto him, Lord, let it alone this year also, till I shall dig about it and dung it. And if it bear fruit, well, and if not, then after thou shalt cut it down." Now, most of the modern English translations use the word fertilizer in place of the word dung, and a handful use the word manure, but that's what it's referring to in the Greek, cow poop, okay? And I felt the Lord saying that he has all of us, the body of Christ, in a special end-time fertilization season. Now, not every detail in the parable has significance for this message. While I believe there are a number of Christians that aren't producing or haven't produced much fruit in their lives, as the parable alludes to in verse 6, this message isn't a judgment against those people, unless it just happens to convict someone listening to this right now. It's mainly just what the gardener says in verse 8, and then the last phrase in verse 9. So we know that manure is used as fertilizer. So I believe God was showing me that all of the challenges that we've had the last few years with COVID-19, all the lives lost because of it, the effects that the quarantine has had on mental health, and not to mention the numerous negative effects on the economy. All of this is being used by God as fertilizer. You know, that stinky, undesirable stuff that's been thrown on us and at us. And it's not just that, but it includes all the corruption in the current administration of our government, with the obvious agenda that they've set forth by the influence of the enemy to be in collusion with the corrupt health organizations and the mainstream media to prepare the world for the conditions necessary for the arrival of the Antichrist and mark of the beast. Now, if you disagree with that assessment and don't believe that there's a conspiracy like that going on, then I'm praying for you. So, this season of fertilization is preparation for the new season of revival that God has planned for the next few years prior to the start of the tribulation period. Those last 3.5 years before the second coming. Now, it's similar to how God sifted out the warriors for Gideon's army in Judges chapter 7. I believe God instructed Gideon to choose those he or God already knew would be the most valiant warriors for the battle. I also believe God is looking for believers now that he knows he can bless with miracles, finances, and gospel outreach opportunities to use for this coming revival. Those that are walking with him every day, praying throughout the day and reading and studying the Bible, no matter how challenging those habits may be. Those that greatly desire to be used by God to reach the world around them with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, I'm praying for those opportunities, but I'm also praying for miraculous healing, but I'm asking God to not only heal me, but also make me a conduit for his healing to others. So as I continue to read through Luke, God also showed me how another parable in Luke, the next chapter over, chapter 14, verses 16 through 24, relates to this coming revival. In this parable, Jesus states a certain man was planning a great supper, which I believe is a reference to the wedding feast coming in the very near future, and how he sent his servants to go and invite people to the supper. And all of them refused to come, but offered their excuses. One had just bought a plot of land and refused to go to the supper so he could tend to the land. Another had just bought a new team of oxen and preferred to go tend to them. And another just got married and preferred to tend to his new relationship. So the man's servant was instructed to go to the streets, the lanes of the city, the highways and the hedges, and invite whomever would come. So this aspect is talked about here relates to what Jesus also said in the first parable of the fruitless fig tree in Luke 13, but the last part of verse 9, when the gardener tells the landowner that if the season of fertilization doesn't produce any fruit on the tree, then he would, after that, cut it down. And what that means for this coming revival is that all who don't respond favorably in this present season of fertilization would just not be abundantly blessed and used in the coming season of revival. So we need to be careful not to get so caught up in tending to and distracted by our troubles and difficulties, as well as any of our regular conditions and situations, that we neglect to press into our relationship with God, which means to press in like we've never pressed in before, fasting more, praying more, studying more than we ever have previously, as well as crying out to God and offering ourselves to his service to reach out to others like never before. So I'm going to encourage you today to step up your prayer time with God, keep seeking, keep studying, and cut back on non-spiritual activities that don't produce any good effects, whether they seem sinful or not. As the Apostle Paul says in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 16, to redeem the time, for the days are evil. So in closing, let me give you two more verses to encourage you. Out of Hebrews chapter 10, verse 36, the writer says, "For you have need of patience, that after you have done the will of God, you might receive the promise." And then Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, where the Apostle Paul says, "Let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not." So as always, if you are saved or think that you're saved, but don't have a specific memory of ever confessing Jesus out loud, then I urge you to do so as soon as possible. God bless you.